Operating without proper permits, my father announced to the city compliance officer, his voice ringing with satisfaction. She's been running an illegal business out of residential property, disturbing the neighborhood, probably evading taxes too. My mother stood beside him clutching a manila folder stuffed with 14 separate complaints she filed over 8 months, each one more elaborate than the last. I sat in my own living room, saying nothing, watching the inspector flip through her clipboard, until she looked up, saw my face, and her professional composure shattered into something I never expected. But why did City Inspector Daniela Reyes suddenly have tears streaming down her cheeks, her hand trembling as she touched the embroidered logo on her jacket, my company's logo, the same one worn by the 340 employees whose paychecks I signed every 2 weeks? Mrs. Okonkwo? Her voice cracked. I work for you. Spotless Future gave me a job when nobody else would hire me. I was homeless. You changed my life. My father's triumphant expression froze. My mother's folder slipped from her fingers, complaints scattering across the hardwood floor. Who filed these? Daniela demanded, her tears transforming into something harder. Who is trying to shut down the company that employs half the single mothers in the city? The Okonkwo family had a plan for everyone except me. My father, Kenneth Okonkwo, was a petroleum engineer who immigrated from Nigeria in 1982 and built a comfortable life in Houston through discipline and relentless ambition. My mother, Patricia, had been a pharmacist before retiring early to manage the family's rental properties. My older brother Emeka was an anesthesiologist at Houston Methodist. My younger sister Adiz was finishing her surgical residency at Baylor. Medicine. Engineering. Respectable professions with clear hierarchies and obvious prestige. And then there was me. Chidinma. The middle child who dropped out of pre-med after 2 years to start a cleaning company. A maid service, my father had said, his disappointment so thick it felt physical. You're going to clean other people's toilets? I'm going to build a business that cleans other people's toilets. There's a difference. There's no difference to our community. What am I supposed to tell Pastor Adeyemi when he asks about my children? That Chidinma scrubs floors for a living? Tell him whatever you want. I don't need his approval. You need ours. No, I'd said quietly. I really don't. I'd walked out of that conversation and never asked for their blessing again. I started Spotless Future Cleaning Services 11 years ago with $2,000 in savings, a used Honda Civic, and more determination than common sense. The name wasn't accidental. I'd seen something during my brief time in pre-med, the exhausted nurses working double shifts, the single mothers in the hospital cafeteria counting coins for lunch, the women who cleaned the buildings at night invisible to everyone who walked past them. I'd seen how the world treated people who did unskilled labor, as if keeping spaces clean and functional wasn't essential to everything else working. I wanted to build something different. A cleaning company that paid living wages, provided health insurance, offered training and advancement opportunities. A company where the employees weren't invisible, where they were the whole point. The first 3 years nearly broke me. I cleaned houses myself, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I learned every chemical, every technique, every shortcut that actually worked versus the ones that just looked good temporarily. I underbid contracts to get my foot in the door, then delivered quality that made clients never want to switch. My family watched from the sidelines, waiting for the inevitable failure. Still playing maid, my brother Emeka would ask during holiday dinners I increasingly avoided. Your sister the janitor, my father would mutter when he thought I couldn't hear. We just want better for you, my mother would say, which meant, we're ashamed of you. By year 4, Spotless Future had 15 employees and contracts with 3 office buildings. By year 6, we'd expanded to 42 employees and added residential deep cleaning services. By year 8, we'd crossed into commercial contracts, hospitals, hotels, corporate headquarters, and employed over 200 people. The growth accelerated in years 9 and 10. We won the cleaning contract for Houston's new convention center. We expanded into Austin and San Antonio. We developed a proprietary training program that other companies tried to copy. Industry publications profiled our employee retention rates, unheard of in an industry known for constant turnover. By year 11, Spotless Future employed 340 people across 3 Texas cities. We generated $14 million in revenue last year. We provided health insurance, paid sick leave, and a retirement matching program. We promoted 47 employees into management positions. And we'd hired women that nobody else would touch. Women with criminal records who couldn't pass background checks elsewhere. Women escaping domestic violence who needed income immediately. Women who'd been homeless, addicted, incarcerated. Women whose pasts made them unemployable in traditional jobs but who showed up every single day ready to work. Daniela Reyes had been one of them. I'd hired her 3 years ago, fresh out of a shelter, with nothing but a willingness to work hard. She'd cleaned hotel rooms for 6 months, then moved into commercial contracts, then trained for quality inspection. When the city announced they needed diversity hires for their regulatory departments, I'd written her a recommendation letter. She'd gotten the job. City inspector, full benefits, pension track. She still wore her spotless future jacket on weekends when she volunteered at the shelter where she'd once stayed. I had no idea she'd be the inspector assigned to investigate my parents' complaints. The complaints had started 8 months ago. My parents had moved to a new house in my neighborhood, not coincidentally, I was certain. After years of pretending I didn't exist, they'd suddenly purchased a property 3 blocks from my home office. Then the complaints began. Excessive commercial vehicle traffic in residential area. My employees sometimes picked up supplies from my garage. Improper storage of hazardous chemicals. Standard cleaning supplies, properly stored. Operating a business without proper zoning permits. My home office was fully permitted. Noise violations. We had no noise. Unpermitted signage. I had no signs. Suspected tax evasion. Completely fabricated. 14 complaints in 8 months, each one investigated and dismissed. But my mother kept filing them, each time adding new allegations, each time forcing me to spend time and money responding to bureaucratic inquiries. I knew what they were doing. Death by 1,000 cuts. They couldn't accept my success, so they'd try to drown me in regulatory harassment until something stuck. The 14th complaint triggered a comprehensive review. Enough allegations had accumulated that the city sent a senior inspector for an official on-site evaluation. My parents requested to be present for the inspection. As concerned neighbors, they claimed. I agreed. Let them watch. Daniela arrived at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I hadn't known who would be assigned to my case. When I opened the door and saw her face, older now, confident, professional in her city inspector uniform with my company's logo still embroidered on the jacket underneath, I felt something shift in my chest. She didn't recognize me immediately. She was reviewing her clipboard, preparing her official introduction. Good morning. I'm Inspector Reyes from the City of Houston Department of Regulatory Compliance. I'm here regarding multiple complaints filed against this address relating to alleged business violations. Then she looked up. Her professional mask dissolved. Her eyes went wide, then wet. Mrs. Okonkwo? My parents had positioned themselves in my living room, ready to witness my downfall. My father sat in what he probably thought was a power position. My mother had her folder of complaints ready to present. They had no idea what was about to happen. Hello, Daniela, I said. It's good to see you. I work for you, she whispered. I worked for you. Spotless future. You hired me when I had nothing. You're the reason I have this job, this career, this life. She touched the logo on her jacket. The one she still wore, even years after leaving the company. I didn't know you'd be the inspector. I didn't know the complaint was against you. She turned slowly to face my parents. Who filed these? My father stood, attempting to recover his authority. I'm Kenneth Okonkwo, and this is my wife Patricia. We're the concerned citizens who brought these violations to the city's attention. Okonkwo. Daniela's voice had changed. Harder now. The same last name. She's our daughter, my mother said. Not that it's relevant to the violations. Your daughter. Daniela looked at the complaint file, then at me, then back at my parents. You reported your own daughter to the city? 14 times? She's operating an illegal business. Spotless Future Cleaning Services is one of the most respected companies in Houston. Daniela's tears had dried. What replaced them was cold, professional fury. I know because I helped build it. I know because 340 people depend on it for their livelihoods. I know because Mrs. Okonkwo gave me a chance when your respectable world wouldn't even let me apply for jobs. She opened her inspector's tablet. Let's conduct this review properly, shall we? The inspection took 2 hours. Daniela was thorough, professionally, meticulously thorough. She examined every permit, every license, every piece of documentation related to my home office operation. She photographed the supply storage area. She reviewed vehicle registration records. She checked zoning compliance, tax filings, insurance certificates. My parents watched, growing increasingly uncomfortable as each allegation evaporated under scrutiny. Your home office permit is current and properly filed, Daniela announced. Your business license covers all described activities. Your vehicle storage complies with residential regulations. Your supply storage meets OSHA requirements and local safety codes. She scrolled through her tablet. I've reviewed the 14 previous complaints filed against this address. All were investigated and found to be without merit. The allegations in this comprehensive review are similarly unfounded. My father stood again. There must be something. There's nothing, Mr. Okonkwo. Daniela cut him off. Your daughter's business is fully compliant with every applicable regulation. In fact, Spotless Future has one of the best compliance records of any company this size in the Houston area. I know because I helped implement many of their safety protocols. She turned to me. Mrs. Okonkwo, I'm closing this review with a finding of full compliance. No violations, no citations, no further action required. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you for everything you did for me. She said it quietly, but my parents heard every word. Then she turned back to them. However, I am noting in my report that this address has been the subject of 14 complaints over 8 months, all filed by the same individuals, all found to be without merit. The city takes a dim view of complaint systems being weaponized for personal vendettas. Filing false reports with regulatory agencies is a misdemeanor offense. My mother's face went pale. We didn't file false reports. You alleged tax evasion with no evidence. You claimed unpermitted signage when there is no signage. You reported hazardous chemical violations that don't exist. Either you were profoundly misinformed, or you were deliberately filing false complaints to harass a legitimate business owner. She gathered her materials. I'll be including a recommendation that any future complaints from this address receive additional scrutiny for potential bad faith filing. And I'll be forwarding this pattern of complaints to the city attorney's office for review. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The city attorney's office opened an investigation into my parents' complaint pattern. Filing 14 baseless complaints against a single address constituted harassment under Houston Municipal Code. The fact that the target was their own daughter made it worse, not better. 3 weeks after the inspection, my parents received a formal warning. Any future unfounded complaints would result in misdemeanor charges and potential civil liability for harassment. They were also billed for the administrative costs of investigating 14 frivolous reports, nearly $8,000 in city staff time. My father, the man who'd spent 40 years building a reputation for discipline and respectability, had to write a check to the city of Houston for harassing his own daughter. The Nigerian community found out, of course. These things always come out. Pastor Adeyemi, the same one my father had worried about impressing, called a family meeting that neither of my parents could avoid. I wasn't there, but Emeka told me about it later. The pastor had spoken about the sin of pride, about parents who couldn't see their children's blessings because they were too busy mourning the expectations those children hadn't met. He'd used my parents as an example, not by name, but everyone knew. They stopped attending that church. My sister Adiz called me a week after the pastor's meeting. We'd never been close, she'd always followed the family script too carefully to question it, but something had shifted. I didn't know what they were doing, she said. The complaints, the harassment. I thought they were just disappointed. I didn't know they were actively trying to hurt you. Would it have mattered if you'd known? She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe not. I was so focused on staying in their good graces that I never thought about what that cost you. It cost me a family. I know. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry, Chief, for all of it. For never standing up for you, for letting them say those things, for pretending your success wasn't real because they refused to see it. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was acknowledgement. After 11 years of silence from my siblings, acknowledgement felt like something. Thank you for calling, Adiz. Can I see the company sometime? See what you built? Yes. I'd like that. She visited the Houston headquarters a month later. She watched our training program, met some of the employees, saw the wall where we displayed photos of every person we'd promoted into management. She cried when Daniela told her story, the shelter, the job, the transformation. I had no idea, she kept saying. I had no idea it was this big. This important. They made sure you didn't. She's come to every company event since. She's even written recommendation letters for some of our employees applying to nursing programs. We're rebuilding something, not the family we were supposed to have, but something better. Something chosen. Emeka hasn't reached out. Neither has he condemned our parents publicly. He exists in the space between, neither supporting nor opposing, just absent. Some people don't choose sides. They choose comfort. 6 months after the inspection, my mother sent a letter. It arrived at my office, not my home. She'd finally accepted that my little cleaning business had a real address, real employees, a real place in the world. We never meant for things to go this far. We were worried about you, about your choices, about how it would reflect on the family. We didn't understand what you were building. I read it twice, then set it aside. A week later, I wrote back. For 11 years, you treated my work as an embarrassment. You told our relatives I cleaned toilets for a living. You refused to attend my company's 5th anniversary celebration. And when my success became impossible to deny, you tried to destroy it with fraudulent complaints. You weren't worried about me. You were worried about yourselves, about what my choices said about your parenting, your values, your definition of success. You tried to shut down a company that employs 340 people because you couldn't stand that I built it. I don't need your understanding anymore. I stopped needing it years ago. I didn't hear from them again for a long time. Spotless Future celebrated its 12th anniversary last month. We've grown to 412 employees across 4 Texas cities. We added Dallas operations last year and are planning expansion into Oklahoma City. Revenue exceeded $18 million. We've been featured in Incorporated magazine, profiled by NPR, and received a Small Business Excellence Award from the Houston Chamber of Commerce. But the numbers aren't what matter most. What matters is the 67 women we've hired who had felony convictions and nowhere else to turn. What matters is the 23 employees who've gone from entry-level cleaners to management positions. What matters is the shelter we've partnered with to provide job training for homeless women, the same shelter where Daniela once stayed. Daniela got promoted last year. Senior inspector now, with a team of her own. She still volunteers at the shelter on weekends. She still wears her Spotless Future jacket when she does. You know why I kept it, she asked me once, over coffee. Because it reminds me that second chances are real. That someone can look at you when you have nothing, no address, no references, no reason for anyone to trust you, and say, I believe you can do this job. That's what you did for me. That's what Spotless Future does for everyone. I've had that conversation, in various forms, with dozens of employees over the years. Women who'd given up on themselves until someone gave them a chance. Women whose families had written them off, whose communities had rejected them, whose own parents had stopped believing in them. I understood that feeling more than they knew. My son was born 7 months ago. His name is Tebena, a Nigerian name that means, praise God. My husband Emmanuel chose it. He said our son should carry a name that reflected gratitude for how far we'd come. I hold Tebena in the nursery of our home, a home I purchased with money earned from a business my parents tried to destroy, and I tell him stories about perseverance. About building something when everyone expects you to fail. About the difference between people who lift others up and people who tear them down. Your grandparents, my parents, they won't be part of your life, I told him last week, though he's too young to understand. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. They had 11 years to support what I was building. Instead, they spent 8 months trying to destroy it. He grabbed my finger with his tiny hand. You're going to do whatever you want with your life, Tebena. Doctor, engineer, artist, teacher, I don't care. Whatever you choose, I'll be there celebrating you. Not because your success reflects on me, but because your success is yours. I put him in his crib and watched him sleep. My parents filed 14 complaints trying to shut down my business. They watched city inspector after city inspector clear me of wrongdoing, and they kept filing. They wanted so badly for me to fail that they broke the law trying to make it happen. Instead, the inspector they sent was a woman whose life my company had saved. She walked into my house wearing my logo, crying because she recognized the woman who'd believed in her when no one else would. My parents wanted to prove I was running an illegitimate operation. They proved their own illegitimacy instead. And now Spotless Future keeps growing. Keeps hiring women nobody else will hire. Keeps proving that dignity isn't about the work you do, it's about how you treat the people who do it. My parents called it cleaning toilets. I call it changing lives. 412 employees and counting. That's my answer to every complaint they ever filed.